It's Don here from the board. Thanks for coming along and checking out this video. Now, I might sound a little bit weird right now because my voice is really croaky. I think I might have a bit of a, a throat infection, so I do apologize in advance that if I do a bit of coughing and spluttering, it's because I kind of have what's like a frog in my throat, which incidentally is actually some of the things we're going to be looking at today. So in this video, I am going to be doing a Massdrop Artisan review. Thanks to Mitenolet from the unboxing video before, I have a bunch of Artisans here that I am going to be reviewing before I send them back home. And yeah, I kind of put together a little bit of a rig as well to try and get a bit of closer detail, because I know previously when I was looking at the Mount Fuji, it was really hard for me to sort of show the details because the camera wasn't focusing very well. It's, you know, obviously a webcam type of setup, and it didn't have that macro feature. Now, I was using the handheld loop. It's only a 10x loop and it works fine, but yeah, it didn't have really the way for me at that time with the top mount camera on my desktop to show the features that I was talking about. And somebody had suggested that I could get, you know, those clip-ons for mobile phones and things like that. Now, I haven't actually gone ahead and done that because I thought, well, I've got this really U-Butte helping hand setup. Why don't I clamp the loop to that and be able to have it at the webcam? So that's what I'm kind of playing with today, and hopefully we'll be able to see what's going on. So let's switch down to the desktop and have a look at the actual items we're going to be looking at today in this review. And here we go. So I've got 3 Froggy Artisans. I've got 2 sort of sculpted Artisans. They're resin embedded Artisans, and then I've got 2 Spacebar Artisans here as well. Now, what I want to start with, I guess, is probably the Spacebars. So let's just check out what the Spacebars are all about and their original drop on Massdrop. Okay, so these Spacebars are the Flower Power PBT Spacebar 2-back. It's PBT in material, and you can see you can get it for 20 bucks plus postage. Seems like there's a variety of different pattern options here, and what we've got is we've got the Mint and Apple Blossom, which is, I believe, that one there, and we've also got a Sakura Sun and Cherry Blossom, so it's going to be that one there. Now, they're quite nice. If we kind of get in on the actual pictures on the album, you can see kind of the detail there is it's printed. It's meant to be PBT. You have a choice of Cho Profile or OEM, and these, the packet actually says that they are OEM. We can see the underside. It's a standard 625U spacebar, and yeah. So what do we got? Mint and Apple Blossom, and then Sun and Cherry. Dice up printing process, and it's a 2-pack. So the estimated ship date for this current drop is, obviously they're rerunning it because it is not December, and I have these here in my hands after they actually made it to Mitenolet. So let's get back onto the desktop and check these out. So let's open up that one first. So as I showed before in the other video in the unboxing, Roboco, floral printed spacebar, Sun and Cherry Blossom, profile option OEM. We can already see that the underside shows that support ridge. Now, it's really interesting because compared to a lot of other space bars, that's actually a lot of mold sort of marks. It sort of does mean that it's going to be quite stiff, which is fine, but I don't know if it's absolutely necessary to have that kind of grid marking in it, but whoever the manufacturer of these keycaps are has obviously gone to that extent. Now, the spacebar itself is quite smooth. I should just put it on the table and see. Okay, so it's completely flat. There is no warping. I know that for some people in the comments from the discussions of this drop have actually said that their spacebars came in and they were warped. So lucky in at least this first spacebar, it is not warped. One of the comments that was kind of a little bit disheartening was that they had said that the image was stretched. So they must have taken a reference image from somewhere else and then just elongated it to fit across the actual size of the spacebar, or to fill out the amount of actual blank space in the spacebar. And when you look at this spacebar, you can actually see that kind of elongation. The actual proportions of the flowers that are dead on are not perfect. So I would say that that's probably a good indicator of, as one of the cherry blossoms, that should be flush on, but they seem to have a little bit of what that they're talking about in the comments. They also mentioned that the quality of the print wasn't very high because the features were blurred. Now, with Dysub, it's actually really challenging to get features that are not blurred, because as it's absorbing into the material, depending on the heat and the temperature and the actual material itself, the dye goes in and it's going to be potentially blooming and sort of spreading out. So I actually don't have a problem if you lose a bit of clarity in a Dysub kind of thing, but I mean, you can see, the circle, the sun, in theory should be circular, but it doesn't work because they've stretched it out to get it to the edge, whereas it would be curving in much more if it was actually a proper circle, as opposed to it being elongated into like an oval type of shape. That said, it's a really nice color. The actual background Dysub seems to be fairly even. It runs all the way down, and you can see how it's wrapped around to the bottom edge of the spacebar itself. So they've done a pretty good job in that complete sort of sub all the way to the edge. You can see it runs all the way to the bottom edge, and it's sort of penetrated, a good millimeter into that plastic. Now, if I get my ruler and I want to measure these, you're looking at 1.5 mil. So it's a good thickness on these PBT keycaps. I don't have a keyboard with a space bar position open, and I have no idea what I just knocked over on my desk. But now I'm not going to put it on a switch cracker because that would just be silly. But what I will put it on is a cherry green, and we'll just see how the fit goes on these. It's a good fit, nice and snug. Not going anywhere with that. And of course, on the sides, that where your stabilizer is going to fit, it's probably not as much of a problem. So that's actually pretty snug. That's a good fit there too. Oh, that one's not wanting to fit. Ooh, okay. And then, interesting. Now, I've got my switch in the right orientation for the axis, so I would expect these, there we go. So it's pretty tight, actually. These, look, it's so tight, I've actually managed to open up my switch trying to get that keycap out. Look at that, I've actually cracked open the switch. Wow. So the tooling is really interesting because the center and this side, so that'll be, so right side and center are fine, but left side is very, very snug. Now, I would not expect that to be really an issue unless if you're using cap crackers, then you might have some stretch on that PBT. So back into the packet you go. Let's put it that way so you can see the pattern through the plastic. Right, and then the second one is our mint and apple blossom. Okay. Similarly so, the bottom is very heavily supported and ridged. The print is much lighter and detail and focus. This is much, much blurrier. So compared to that first one, you definitely have a loss of clarity in the sharpness of the image. I think the color palette makes it also really hard to see the detail because the white and that yellow center from the apple blossoms blending into the mint background really dulls it out, really softens it. But I do like the fact that you still get really great color detail from the dye sub in the branches because you can see the actual texture from those. Obviously, if you're looking close enough, and even when you're looking at it from far away, you can see that color graduation and all of that texture within the branches. I would say actually between the two of these, this mint and apple blossom one would be my favorite, though it's weird because if you put the keycap in the correct orientation, the branches are going down. They're actually coming down, whereas naturally that would actually be going up. So I would actually expect that this is the wrong orientation. The image should have actually been going up this way as opposed to down this way. Of course, if you flip your Spacebars like I do and then you put it like that, that actually works. But yeah, naturally speaking, like the branch is coming down and then out. How many trees grow branches down from the main trunk like that? That's not right. Whereas at least with this Sun and Sakura one, and it's going sideways and up, that's actually natural. So going down and across is not. You can see the dye sub is also, if I can get the focus happening here, the dye sub has penetrated around the edges there as well, about 1 millimeter, as I said. Overall, these are pretty good. Let me put that down and see. Yep, that's not warped whatsoever. We'll get that into the middle. So that's a reasonable fit. That's a fit. Right side is a fit. Oh, that's just fine. Let's see if the left side on this one is also super tight. Yes, it is. So I don't know what's up with the molds that Ido Bow's using on these. Well, whoever's actually supplying these keycaps to them for dye subbing, but these left-hand side stems are considerably tighter. So if you do have these, if you are getting these and you're putting them on your keyboard and you're going to be pulling them off at some point to do switch lubing, cleaning, maintenance, or whatever, be aware of that and make sure you've got plenty of support on the left side when you're pulling, and hopefully it's also not going to de-house the top of your switch like I did when I was pulling that off. So I like the color, I like the pattern, I like the texture a lot more on the apple and mint. It's not stretched and it's kind of nice actually. Even though it's not fully sharp, it's still got a soft, lush appearance. It's just a pity that my sensibility is being bothered by the tree stem going down. Okay. This throat business is absolutely killing me right now. Now, let's move into our artisan space. We'll leave the nice ones for last. And let's go back and check out what these froggies are all about. So, here is the Waffle Key Studio Artisan Froggy keycaps. We can see there's a variety of color options. And you can get translucent and you can get opaque. So, they're meant to have these googly eyes, and the eyes are meant to move around when you actually press on them. That's what it specifically says. The googly eyes actually move around when you press on the keycaps. So we'll test that. Okay, so we got a green, a solid sort of orangey color. The orangey color is a bit of a mix, so they call it opaque sunrise. The height is 16.5 millimeters, a very specific value being given here. And we've got translucent and translucent sunset as well. So July 18, estimated ship date. If that was when they actually shipped, then getting them in October, that is a heck of a long ship time. So let's head back over and check them out. Now, when I got these, they came in a packet like this from Mitenolet. I think he just sort of put them in together. The green one was already missing its eye. So I'm just going to say straightforward, it's not me that lost the eye. And Mitenolet has actually asked me to surprise him and do something to fix up Mr. Green. So I will think about what I'm going to be doing to help fix up Mr. Green. So we've actually got a green, we've got a orange one, which I believe is meant to be that translucent, what do they call again? Sorry, not translucent, the opaque sunrise. And then we've also got this purpley one, which I believe is meant to be translucent sunset. So to make use of this beast thing here, you can see I've actually got the loop clamped to the other webcam that was my head cam that I'd built. You can see the tape and the cable ties and stuff like that hanging off of it. I've actually got a light panel that I've kind of made a long time ago that I was trying to use for my actual desk setup. So there's the LED panel there, but it wasn't working very well for the actual space, the way that it was reflecting and lighting, so I wasn't using it. But now this is a really good example of what I can use it for. So I'm gonna reposition this. This is called engineering with what you've got. And let us check out the view. So we've got this, it's pretty blur at the moment. I'm just gonna adjust that a little bit, try and get that back into the center. Maybe I can tilt the camera, and then I'm going to turn the actual light on. Sorry, I do apologize if you were suddenly very badly blinded. I forgot to mention that. So, first one let's check out is Mr. Green. Look at those lips. So we got some eyes, we got some really good detail happening on the nose. There's a little bit of dust particle there. See if we can just clean that off. Look at that. That focus is great. Very, very big empty eye socket happening there. And of course there's the other eye. But look, as I tap it, the eye's not doing anything. It's stuck. Now I'm going to put my finger over it just in case. I'm just going to give it a tap. Look, the eye's not going anywhere. So the claim that the eyes move, I mean, yeah, they're googly eyes. They are meant to move, but when you press on it, like, I don't actually think these ones have that much space for them to move. So he's kind of got an upward gaze, or it, gender assumptions there, it has an upward gaze constantly. The smoothness of the cap is quite nice on the surface. It's been well smoothed. The textures are quite nice. We've got some sort of there's effects happening here. Excuse me. So we've got these 3 stripes on the back, and they kind of look like they're smoothing out marks or something, but I'm not 100% sure if they're meant to be there, because now you ordinarily wouldn't see them anyway if you got them on your keycaps, but now that I've got this under some magnification and powered lights, you can see that texture. It kind of ruins it a little bit if it's not meant to be there for the texture of the back of the frog. The other side, the eyes are quite nice. I don't know how they made them, but they're very well blended into the actual top of the head, so that's really cool. Now if we go to the underside, we can see the sanding marks. Now as I mentioned before when I talked about the oh yeah, you guys probably won't know this one yet because I haven't released that video, but I was talking about polishing and cleaning materials and the actual scratch depth that you can get out of it and how you get rid of it, because typically it's 3 times the depth of the medium that you polish with. But you can definitely see the scratch marks that are happening here in the center stem. It's quite clean, but it probably would have been nicer if they'd been buffed out a little bit better. The thickness of this cap is really, really thick. Like, look at that. It's absolutely heavy duty. Very, very thick. There doesn't appear to be any maker's marks in there. And we got some sort of dust particles, whether that's actually embedded or not. Kind of dying here. We'll see if I can make it through this review. Okay. You're going to have to excuse me a second while I go and get some water. All right. Anyway, that's Mr. Green Froggy under the limelight, missing an eye. Let's move on to the opaque sunrise. So this guy is opaque, so we don't expect that light is really going to get through him. The mold is pretty much the same, so we're not going to expect much difference in the quality. But I want to check on the back. Oh look, there's a bubble. But that's okay. A minor blip like that's surely not a problem, is it? But so I just heard something fall out there, and the eye just fell out. It's the same eye as the green froggy. Where did your eye go? That's not good. Aha. Right, so let's just move that back over there. So, Mr. Orange, your eye has fallen out. Poor Mr. Orange. His eye has fallen out, but on the upside, that eyeball actually does wobble. Now, what that says to me is these eyes are probably not glued in, or if they are glued in, they're not glued in very well, because, well, if they were, then they surely would have survived and not fallen out. But now you can kind of see that that's a little bit out of focus, but that eyeball is actually wobbling around. It is rolling around as intended. So that's nice. I'm just going to hit my finger over that, or maybe I'll just let it fall out again. So I can check the back, because I want to see if those marks are there, and they're not. So it means that they've obviously got a number of molds, which is not surprising, because if you're going to be doing a mass drop and you're going to be selling potentially hundreds of these things, you need to be able to make them efficiently. So for whatever reason, this one doesn't have those weird marks, whereas the green one does. Now, what's a little bit disappointing on Mr. Orange is the blending of the colors with this opaque one is not satisfying. So I'm going to switch back over to the right monitor. Okay, and we have a look. The colors, I would have expected the darkness, that bluish color tinge, to be swirling through the whole thing. Now, I think this was actually printed using an SLA resin printer, because this is obviously some kind of master mold, because you can actually see the ripple lines from the resin printer. So this would have been designed using a resin printer, and then they made a master mold out of it, which I don't have a problem with. Like, to get that level of detail and quality, that's perfectly fine, as long as people understand that the actual cap is not 3D printed, which it's not. But the coloring, what I would be expecting out of the coloring, especially when you look at it, is that color blending is going to be a mix. The orange really permeates down below. That bluish, grayish color is working its way up and around. It should not just be a solid mass of one particular color. Now, if we come back to the camera, what I am seeing here, what I'm experiencing here, is that this frog is just straight up orange all the way on the top, and then there's just like a shot of this bluey gray color on the bottom. There is barely a hint of that orange, which is just here on this side, that is swirling through. You're not getting that really lovely, gorgeous color. It's almost like a two-tone shot as opposed to color mixing. So that's a little bit disappointing for Mr. Orange. You can see in the base that there is some of that mixing happening, but it's not very sort of artistic, as it were, that the reference pictures from the drop would indicate. Now the stem, of course, once again, it's clean, it's polished to a certain extent, but you can definitely see scratch marks. There we go. So you can see scratch marks up there from all sorts of different angles of the actual sanding and smoothness. Probably would have been nice if it had been polished down a bit further. And I have to make sure that I don't lose Mr. Orange's eye. I'll have to find out if he wants me to glue them back in, or if he's going to glue them back in himself, or they kind of like just snap in, but obviously they're just not actually staying in. Look, the eye's wobbling. Okay, so now we go to the last one, which is meant to be the sunset, transparent sunset. Is that what it was called? I keep stuffing up these names. Translucent sunset. Okay, so translucent sunset once again is a purpley pinkish blend. So what I'm kind of seeing here, if I look at the reference picture, once again, let's come over to the reference picture. Okay, so we're seeing a purple and a pink blend. Purple and pinks is what the reference picture shows, and we can see in that one it's also a purple and a pink. We can see in that one it's a purple and a pink. We can see in that one it's a purple and a pink. So I'm going to be expecting purple and pink. What we actually get in reality, actually I don't know if the eyes are going to pop out, so let me just upend it and tap it lightly. Okay, so the eyes aren't falling out, which is good. We can see that one eye is jiggling. The right eye is jiggling, but the left eye jiggling? Oh yeah, the left eye is jiggling. So both eyes on purple pink is jiggling, which is good, and none of them are falling out. So this one ticks that box. The texture here, but are you noticing something? As I'm turning this around, you get an orange. You get an orange. So far away, it does have a purplish, pinkish look to it, but it's actually got blends of orange in here, which is really, really interesting. I don't mind that, and the back of that is nice and smooth and clean. It doesn't have those three weird scratch marks. There's no bubbles or holes here. It's pretty good. But when I take it away and I look at it under normal lighting conditions, I can see that there's actually orange shot into this as well. There is actually a predominant orange coloring through this under the light. I don't think it's really a problem because it's meant to be a sunset, translucent sunrise or sunset or whatever it is. I think it works really well. It's just that if you didn't want to have any of that orange color because the reference picture said that you were only going to be expecting a purple and pink, then it could potentially annoy you. So let's just come back. Now you can see what I'm talking about, right? In this, you've got a very distinct orange tone that shows up as well as those purples and pinks. And once again, nice clean bottom in terms of it's flat and there's no sort of pock marks or bubbles, but the scratch marks, if that's something that would bother you, well, yeah, maybe get like 3,000 or 5,000 grit sandpaper and sort of clean that up yourself and see how that turns out. So now I'm just going to hold this up to the actual top-down camera, and you can see it looks purple and pink as it is now with that backlighting, but as you turn it, well, it's much harder to see it on the camera compared to in person, but you can see there's orange hues that are happening in it. This camera's trying to fixate on what's happening down there. Overall, I would say the frogs tick most of the boxes. It's just that the eye bits don't really move properly on both the green one and the orange one, and the fact that the eye pops out of the orange one, and obviously one of the eyes on the green one's also come out and disappeared somewhere. It's not going to be a hit and a miss situation. I think they're quite cute. I think they're quite, fun. Now let's just check out the fit with our cherry green again. So with the sunset, it's a good fit. It's firm. The the eyes do actually move on this one as I press them, which is actually quite fun. I wouldn't say it's the firmest of fits, but if I flick it, it is not coming off that keycap, so it has plenty of grip there. Let's try Mr. Green. Green's a little bit firmer, but even as I flick it, that eye is not gone anywhere. That eye is firmly centered to where, well, slightly upwards of the center, and it's got a good amount of grip. And then the orange one, this one's going to be dangerous because I'm potentially going to lose that eyeball. So let's just pop out that eye, not lose that eye. So that was actually pretty snug going on. That other eye is also fixed, not going anywhere. Yeah, and that's actually got a good amount of grip coming off as well. So, not bad. Not bad at all. Just the eye and those weird marks on the back of the green one as well. Man, I'm going to end up losing that eyeball, so I'm going to put that back in the packet for now, and that way it should prevent me from losing it. Just a random single Google eye. Right, now, onto the last keycaps that we're going to be looking at in this, I guess, probably long video. This is the Dwarf Factory Anura Frog Resin Artisan keycap. They actually look really cool, and you can see there's heaps of detail that's happening here. There's 5 different color schemes to it. It's meant to be 2 frogs with a clear top, and there's detail and dots on these frogs. There's texture on the actual terrain that the frogs live on. You should be able to see them sideways through the actual cap and their 3D dimensionality. So I'm really keen to get in and look at these in detail, because that Fuji keycap came very poorly against these reference pictures that they had, whereas I've got some beautiful reference pictures here. And now that I've got this sort of setup happening on my desk, we can really take a poke and check out how they match to their expectations. So let's go back onto the camera. And so there's 2 of them. We'll go with this one first, whichever one it is. And it is the... I'm holding it up to the camera when the screen is using this other camera. Yeah, good one. Okay, so the first one that we're looking at is going to be the orangey, purpley, pinky one. And just from first looks already, like, it looks good. Compared to the Mount Fuji cap, this thing is a billion times better. So much better. The outside surface is super clean, it's super smooth, it's super clear, it's super polished. So straight off the bat, like, that's a massive tick. The fact is, without even going under the camera, you can see that 3-dimensionality is preserved in that. The number of multi-shots or paint that's required on this is really cool. So I'm assuming that they're doing these as resin shots, doing all of that and then doing a clear shot over the top. But the time that it's taking for them to do that shot and painting and everything else, I don't know. But it looks really good just from a cursory examination on the outside. So let's get under the actual 10 times mag. Check it out. So here we go. Now if I just try and clear that dust off it. So you'll see the smudging on top. That's just me. Maybe I can clean that off. Give it a little bit of a polish on my shirt. Take away dirty fingerprints and come back. Okay, so we've got eyeballs, we've got white dots on the back, we've got big frog, we've got little frog, we've got surface texture on the actual rocks. I think this is really, really great work. If we go sideways, you can see the actual, there's some bubbles in there, but I'm not too fussed about that. I mean, it's frogs, it's aquatic. Having bubbles, you would kind of expect that, and it sits in the theme quite nicely. That little frog, the dots on the back, the texture, the shape, the clarity of this is really, really great. And you can see, you know, the knee bend on that frog. It's really, really good. So compared to Mount Fuji, this one is just absolutely killing it. The detail on that is lovely. The actual terrain detail is great because you can see the striation here, so the layers of the rock. Now there's fingerprintish type of marks or lines across that. Whether it's deliberate or not, it doesn't matter because it actually fits in really well to like the sediment layers. It does kind of look like they're painted, but that's okay. Painted and then encapsulated works just fine. So yeah, I'm actually really, really pleased with how these look. And of course, if we go to the underside, this is a little bit different compared to those frog ones. So we've got DF, so the Dwarf, is it Dwarf Factory? Yeah, Dwarf Factory. They've actually left their maker's mark there, and you can see there's actually 3D printing marks visible. So their mold system looks like it was actually 3D printed, and they haven't really taken the time to sand or smooth away, because you can see on the stem you've still got the actual ripples from the 3D printing process, and you can see how thick that border is where they've got the initial inside cap and then they've had that encapsulation shot over the top, and then they've actually polished, sanded that back. So, you know, I think overall that actually works out really, really great. But we want to see, of course, how consistent they are with that, since they're offering a large amount and different color schemes. And we've got another one, and it's that browny greeny one. Just trying to give that a little bit of a polish on the shirt again. So let's check out the greeny browny one. Look at that. So you can see that actually it's 3D printed, that base model, I think, because you can see the actual layers, like once again SLA layers, resin printed layers on the foot of the frog from that top angle. Okay, it's kind of slightly in focus. You can see those ripple layers. Now the paint that they've applied over the top of it's actually hidden most of that detail, but the head of the frog, you can see those concentric circle ripples. That's from SLA 3D printing. Doesn't matter. They've done a bang up job in their casting of them, replicating the 3D print, and of course the hand painting of these. So the texture's there, the 3D-ness is there. Now this one actually feels like it's a lot lower positioned in the shot. Maybe let's just go and do a comparison of how much headspace there is. Okay, so we can see there's probably a good amount of distance there between the big frog and the top of the cap, and there is much less headspace between the big frog and that cap. So are the heights overall the same? They're not. That's really, really interesting. Or are they? Are they? Oh no, they are. But the angle, I think the angle's a little bit weird. And I think I know what's happening there. So, almost did it again. Let me just switch over there. So, I'll get back to looking at the detail on the brown and green one, but you can see the heights are pretty close. But then as you turn it around, you can see there's a little bit of a discrepancy kind of in the shaping of the rest of the angles of the cap. And I think what's happened there is when they did the shot and they pulled it out and they were trying to get this water clear finish on the surface, they've actually polished it probably more aggressively on one cap than the other. Or their original SA caps that they used to make the molds weren't from the same series, because the actual angle of this one here, I don't know if it's going to come across very well. Okay, so the angle for this one here is different to the angle of this one here. They're both row ones, but you can see that they slant slightly differently. So it's almost like, say, a Signature Plastics versus a Max Key SA profile. They are actually different. So at least that kind of makes sense if they were using different reference SA keycaps. So let's go back under the camera again, just to finish looking at this particular one. So the height is a little bit different. The striations of the layer and the paint is the same in that they are hand painted. I don't feel these ones were done as nice. The painting is kind of very muddy and it doesn't have the same feel about it. This green and brown paint scheme is very flat. Like, it doesn't have, I know the other one had sparkles and features like that, but I think it worked a lot better to accentuate it. Once again, you can see the ripples there happening on that 3D printing. It's not masked by the paint that they've put on this very much by comparison. The back of the cap, you know, this one definitely doesn't have that same feel about it. It's nice, don't get me wrong, but it's not as nice as that first blue one, just because the paint job is so flat, and it doesn't blend well. Because if you look at, say, that boundary between the green and that, they've mispainted that. Now, I know this sounds really picky, but it's those fine details that make and break a quality product that's, you know, being offered out there. And something like that, whereas if I come to this one and I have a look at it, you don't have that problem because the color scheme blends in so much nicer, and they don't have that bleed. Now, if these are painted by different people as part of their production process, well, one of them definitely has a lot more skill in painting keycaps with fine liners and stuff like that than the other. And once again, you can see on this side that they've also overrun with that brownie orange, brownie mustard colored kind of fill. Now, I'm just going to give that a bit of a clean over, and you can see there's like some whitish mark there on that striation layer. You know, it just means whoever made this probably either rushed it or just weren't as confident in their paint skills compared to the person who did that blue purple one. Overall, it's still pretty nice. Okay, so we're going to check out the underside, of course, for completeness. And hey, there we go. So there's the DF for Dwarf Factory. Once again, you can see the ripple marks from the actual 3D printing process. This one is a little bit rougher. You can see on the edges on this right hand side that they didn't sand and smooth and polish cut it all the way down so it was even, and internally inside edge of that, it's the same. They didn't take as much material off the bottom of this because you can't actually see the material of the inner shot. It's all clear resin. It's all clear resin, which is why it's so reflective. Whereas when they polished this first one that we had a look at, they actually took it down to that material level, which is why you can see that boundary border. So whereas this one, they've just cleaned it up a little bit and smoothed it off. Now the crucifix though is wonky. Look at that. Wow, that's squished. That crucifix is squished, whereas this one, it's clean. Like that one's really nice, but this one is like, it's wonky. Its circular feel is, it looks oval. It looks oval, right? And that bottom edge, that bottom part of the crucifix is like at an angle. So this will be interesting. Now if we switch that off, and unplug the light. There we go. Let's just take that away. That to the side. No doubt it's quite warm. Okay, so here's the two keycaps there. Let's try it on our cherry green. That's really nice. That's snug. Make sure I get that on the right orientation properly. There we go. Fits well. It's got a good firm grip on that. So I do not expect that on flick test it'll go anywhere, and it sure does not. So that's good. Pass. And then Mr. Wonky Stem. Mr. Wonky Stem. Why am I not surprised that... There we go. Okay, so it did fit in, but it had to get past a part of that wonk. Now, I hope I didn't break that. I didn't hear any cracking, so I do apologize, Mitenolet, if the stem on this is busted. I will take full responsibility for that if that is the case, but I'm not going to pull that off and check it right now because I might as well do the flick test while I'm at it. But noting how snug it was to actually get it on, it obviously passed that, and with my... So it took quite a bit of force to get that off, and it's actually pushed a bit of material into it. I realized that I probably should have left the setup so you could see it, since this is going backwards in technology. Come on. There we go. So you can see on that right hand side bottom lip how there's that bit of stuff sticking out there. Well, I hope you can see it. It's actually taken that off the top edge and it's gone in. So it's scraped a bit of that stem going in. That squishiness about that stem is probably accounting for why it was so tough to get it in. It hasn't cracked it or damaged it. It's quite... or has it? Oh, man. I'm going to pull the camera setup back, but I'm just going to check it. So I don't think it has cracked it. It's just because it's translucent, you can see the actual lines in it, but it may have actually stretched it. I'm going to put it back on that green cap again, and I want to see if it's going to feel looser or not, because if it's significantly looser, then it does mean that something may have happened. And I've taken this green stem off, right? I haven't done anything with it, but we'll see if the camera will focus on it. See that white thing on the end there? That is resin that's come off the inside of the cap on the crucifix. So the actual POM material has scraped resin off the inside of that cap. Tolerances, quality control, squished molds. Okay, so once again, I'm trying to get that in, and it did go in a little bit easier, but it's still very snug. So yeah, it's not cracked or stretched. It just looks that way because of the vertical lines within that crucifix. And I think having had that, it did go in a little bit smoother, and now that bit of material that I had scraped is pushed all the way to the bottom of the stem. So rightio. So my final thoughts on that Dwarf Factory, what are they called? Anura frogs, is they're actually really nice. This blue one here is far superior in its quality and production to this brown and green one, but from a distance, if you're not looking at it that close, you're not going to be able to tell. If it's mounted on your keyboard or on your macro pad or on your Artisan display, it's absolutely gorgeous. You just got to make sure that you clean them, keep your fingerprints off them so they don't get that sort of smudgy look and ruin that water clear encapsulation they've gotten. And then of course, recapping our frogs here, we've got Mr. Green, Mr. Orange, and Mr. Pink. So weird marks on the back, these 3 marks on the back, I'm not quite sure what's up with that. It's just weird, like straight up you can even see them on this top camera that they've got like this darkness to it. Were they deliberate stripes? I don't know. If they were deliberate stripes for the translucent ones, how come Mr. Pink, Purple, Orange here doesn't have it? And you can't really see it in this light still again, but you can see there is definitely like a orange hue to that. It's not a solid purple pink. That's okay. But the mixing effect on this orange one is not where I would like to have seen it. It's pretty much just like a shot of orange, and then they shot the grey on top, and it mixed where that interacted rather than it going into the head, into the eye sockets, into the back, or anything like that. And then all the way back to the start, we've had this slightly stretched, distorted, little bit fuzzy-ish sun and cherry blossom, which was okay, growing in the right direction. And then we've got the much nicer pattern, but it is botanically weird because of the tree branch growing down in the wrong direction. Of course, if you flip it around and you flip your space bars like I do, then it ends up being okay-ish, but it still looks a little bit weird. So quality-wise, pretty solid. Just some inconsistencies in some of the production, but out of these, I would say that is going to be the winner. So thumbs up for the Dwarf Factory Anura Frog Resin Artisan keycap, and I really love that mint and apple blossom pattern on that spacebar as well. Thank you very much, Mitenolet, for making this review possible and sending these keycaps over for me to check out and have a bit of fun with. I, of course, will pack up these and do something with Mr. Green here. I'll talk to you about if you want me to glue in Mr. Orange or not. And then these 2 space bars are actually going to be giveaway prizes, raffle prizes at the Sydney 2018 Mechanical Keyboard Meetup. So if you are in Australia, if you're in the Sydney region and you want to come up, down, across for it, then by all means, please do, and you can have a chance of winning one of these 2 space bars. So thanks, of course, for coming along and checking out this video. Don't forget, we do have Patreon if you'd like to support us in what we do. We have our podcast series. I run the Instagram with just random mechanical keyboard pictures and things like that, projects that I'm working on. And yeah, you can hit us up and join our Slack as well. Just shoot me an email at theboardpodcast@gmail.com for an invite where you can hang out with other keyboard-minded people for just chats about stuff, design, build, buy and sell, etc., etc. So thank you very much, and if you like this kind of stuff and you haven't subscribed to our channel, would really appreciate it if you hit that subscribe button below. So thanks for bearing with my croaky voice, and of course, as usual, until next time, happy clacking.